More water. Non-stop thirst. Yes, I'm just waiting for my computer to compute. Thank you very much for coming. I'd like to just get through this quickly. I've promised Minister Ramokgopa that I'll be done in time for his media briefing. I'll just run you through a snapshot of government's performance in 2025 and thereafter open the floor to whatever questions you may have. You don't have to confine yourself to the snapshot of government that I'm going to present. So, as we often hear, December is a silly season in South Africa. It's a season where there's a scarcity of news, and whoever has an opinion about the performance of government publishes it on the different platforms. Some opinions are far-fetched, some are constructive, some are critical, and others are even emotional. Nevertheless, it's time of the year that makes for, this time of the year rather, makes for an interesting reading. In the United Kingdom, where this term originated from, the silly season is associated with the summer parliamentary recess, while in our country it refers to the shutdown over the festive season. While some opinion makers started their assessments soon after the successful hosting of the G20 summit in November, the majority will follow over the. Most assessments are done by media houses, and the results are either a boost for a politician or a negative score, with consequences for those who are in close proximity to a politician. The beauty, though, of these assessments is the safeguards in our Constitution, which protects the freedom of speech as well as the media. So, in light of the scarcity of news, it is apt for government's voice to be heard. It is important to note that the information is quite voluminous. So I'll be giving you just a snapshot of the successes that we've witnessed in this year, 2025. You could rightly ask, what is the yardstick we should use for government in this regard? And that's quite easy. The document to start is the State of the Nation Address, and in this instance, it is the SONA 2025 that was delivered by President Ramaphosa in February of this year. In his address, the President announced that the Government of National Unity has adopted the Medium-Term Development Plan for the period 2024-2029, the MTDP, which sets out 3 key priorities of government. These priorities are to drive inclusive growth and job creation, to reduce poverty, and to tackle the high cost of living, and lastly, to build a capable, ethical, and developmental state. The President went on to say the immediate task is to grow our economy so that we can create jobs, reduce poverty, and improve the lives of all South Africans. The emphasis on the economy is reminiscent of the famous slogan by James Carville, who was a strategist in the Bill Clinton presidential campaign of 1992, when he wrote, "It's the economy, stupid." The green shoots for an economic recovery are quite visible, and I'd like to share a few indicators. The rand is holding its own against major currencies and has breached the level of 17 rands to the US dollar. GDP grew by 0.5% in the third quarter, meaning that the economy is expanding. Much remains in the pipeline to achieve higher growth rate. Its centrality is to attain the country's developmental aspirations. Unemployment for Q3 was down by 1.3 percentage points to 31.9%, with the construction sector the major contributor, with 130,000 new jobs out of a total of 248,000 new jobs. Government will spend R1 trillion over the next 3 years on infrastructure projects. Stability of energy supply is central to this turnaround, and we should be building on the successes thus far to the next level, as we are doing. This year, the Youth Employment Service reached the milestone of 200,000 young South Africans funded and placed into quality first job experiences. South Africa achieved its first rating upgrade in 20 years when the ratings agency Standard & Poor upgraded the country's foreign currency long-term sovereign credit rating to BB from BB minus. In addition, the local currency long-term sovereign credit rating was adjusted to BB plus from BB. The International Monetary Fund lifted its growth forecast for the country to 1.3% in 2025 and 1.4% in 2026. This is from 1.1% and 1.2% respectively. Phase 2 of Operation Vulindlela is gaining traction. The results of this initiative, led by President Ramaphosa to unlock growth and remove obstacles in areas that impede on growth, are starting to filter through. The energy sector is one of them, and as much as we've seen the other reforms in other areas as well. Tourism is on an upward trajectory, and the number of foreign visitors has increased by 18% year on year from 2024. South African tourism reported that most visitors were from the United States, about 331,000 or so, followed by the UK, Germany, the Netherlands, and France. The South African Revenue Service has collected a net revenue of 924.7 billion rands by the 30th of September this year. This is a year-on-year growth of 78.6 billion rands and an overall surplus of 18 billion against its printed estimate. Yes, there are challenges, but government is not afraid to confront them. Local government remains a major challenge. President Ramaphosa and his cabinet have met with 7 of the 9 provincial executives to address key issues in this sphere, and more initiatives are underway to improve service delivery at a local government level as well as governance. Accusations of corruption in the criminal justice system are before the Madlanga Commission. The Justice, Crime Prevention and Security Cluster is continuously looking at measures to fight crime and keep our citizens safe. The GNU priorities are to reduce poverty and tackle the high cost of living. In this regard, we are particularly seized with interventions on assisting households cope with food price volatility, as well as the measures to make public transport affordable. Rising cost of living has become a challenge in many parts of the world, as we have learned from the recent G20 engagements. In conclusion, colleagues, this is not a review of government, but just a high-level glance of successes and issues as well as challenges since the 6th of February 2025. The silly season indeed has highlighted the need for government to improve its communication with its key stakeholders, the people of South Africa and yourselves as the media. Finally, the measures introduced by the 6th administration in 2019 are beginning to bear fruit. The focus now for the GNU is to accelerate this process and ensure that the green shoots of the economic upswing gain momentum and they touch the lives of all South Africans for the remainder of this MTDP period. Okay, colleagues, that's my opening statement. Just to wrap up the year, a quick high-level reflection of the year 2020-25. The President, during his State of the Nation address and the opening of Parliament in 2026, will reflect on some of these issues as he charts and maps the way forward from there onwards. I'll now open the floor to questions, and they don't have to be Kenny Mapanga here, and I can predict what that question is going to be. Kenny?
Okay, thank you. It's Kenny Mapanga from SABC News. I have a question, obviously, about the Madlanga Commission Interim Report. There's a lot of chatter about the fact that it's not going to be released, rather, to the public. Questions surrounding the transparency of the process thus far, and then just to seal the interim report. And then, of course, if the position now is that you're going to be sealing the interim report, and we know that the President is not legally obligated to actually release the final one, does the presidency have a position on whether or not this final report is going to be made public, or if it's going to just be a report that the president is going to be reflecting on and, of course, moving forward? And then, of course, just to add, I have a question from my colleague Lizega Tandwa from The Times. She's asking about the Starlink discourse and whether or not the president is aware of Minister Malatsi's directives, and if he supports that particular equity equivalent investment program that the directives are based on.
Okay, so let's start with, let me tackle this question. Let's start with the Madlanga Commission Interim Report, not final report, Kenny. Let's make sure that we get that right. So maybe let me start my response in this manner. The final report will be made available to the public. So the final report will be released to the public. The Commission will advise the President on areas that are of national security sensitivity and how those areas will need to be managed, but we will cross that bridge when we get to it. I repeat once again, the final report of the Madlanga Commission will be made available to the public. It will be released to the public. However, the interim report, the one that the President is going to receive on Wednesday, the 17th of December, will not be made available to the public. And the reasoning is quite simple to understand. Some of the witnesses that have come before the Commission are going to be called back again to continue with their evidence. Some had evidence located in certain specific areas, but not as broad as it was meant to be. So those witnesses are still going to be given a chance to return to the Commission and give that evidence. So it's not going to be helpful to then start chewing and debating on something that's half-baked. The President will certainly look at it. He hasn't had the luxury of time to follow every day of the Commission's hearing. The interim report will assist him in getting him up to speed with where the Commission is now and some of the issues that have been ventilated and covered in the Commission. However, it will not be helpful for the witnesses, the Commission itself, and all of us to start getting ourselves into knots over something that has not been completed. We need to allow the process to be completed. And as I've said, the President has undertaken to release the final report publicly when the Commission has concluded its work, and the President will then follow the guidance of the Commission with respect to areas that will be of national security sensitivity and how those areas are to be managed. On Liz Ega's question, it's wonderful to see collaboration amongst media houses. I didn't know that the Times Live can ferry a question through the SABC. Such collaboration is applaudable, I must say. Look, the application for a license coming out of that subsector of the communications and ICT sector is not only from Starlink. So we should just avoid the trap of getting fixated over Starlink. There are 4 or 5 other companies that have expressed interest in providing their services here in South Africa. It's not only Starlink. What the minister is doing is within the law, which we must emphasize, within the law, is to look at what can be done to accelerate those processes, right? As you know, the law is quite clear with respect to the local ownership element for those seeking to be licensed as telecommunications and network services providers. And so that's what the minister is doing. So the president has been aware of that process. However, what the president will not endorse and cannot endorse is the subversion of the law. And in his engagements with various role players in this sector, the president has been quite clear that whatever is done must be done within the framework of our laws. And so if it turns out that ICASA cannot do anything beyond what is written in law, then the process will be to look at an amendment of the legislation. That is well guided in our statute in terms of how it needs to proceed. Pule?
Thank you very much. Good morning. Just in relation to Madlanga Commission as well, the process in relation to the witness protection, has there been continuous engagements with the commissioners, and just how serious are you looking into this matter? And just a question as well from a colleague: has South Africa formally asked fellow G20 members to object to our exclusion by the US? And if so, how has the response been to that call? Yeah, thank you.
So there are 2 issues to your first question. One is the protection of witnesses before the commission, or those who are to appear before the commission, right? Yes. So there's been extensive engagements in that regard to ensure that all those who are to appear and those who have appeared before the commission are provided with the adequate security. The minister in this regard has also undertaken to engage the leadership of the media to look at ways in which witnesses can be protected and not be unreasonably and unfairly exposed to those who may seek to harm them. So that process is ongoing, and it's an ongoing process together with the commission ever since the killing of the one witness. Then there's another aspect to this, which is the protection of whistleblowers, right? And there we have a process that's already underway where we have the Protected Disclosure Bill that is currently in consultation at a technical level in government before it proceeds to cabinet. And it covers a couple of areas. One, it covers all spheres of government in terms of obligations with timeframes around dealing with whistleblower information. That's number one. Number two, the bill proposes the role of a retired judge to oversee the levels of compliance with that process. And as I've stated, there is a review that's underway in terms of the witness protection process of all those involved in the Madlanga Commission. And it has already been done, and it will continue on an ongoing basis. G20. Okay, so I think the Minister and the DG at DECO have communicated quite extensively on this. So what are we doing in South Africa with respect to the so-called exclusion from the G20? One, we have strongly asserted that we don't need to be invited to G20 meetings. We are a full member of the G20. We are a founding member of the G20. Secondly, what the US is seeking to do is an affront to multilateralism, and it must be challenged and it must be rejected by all members of the G20. We've made that point quite clearly. We have been engaging all other members of the G20 on this matter. We have encouraged members to express quite strongly their own views as they've expressed to us their support as well as their rejection of the US's position and decision in this regard, which was taken unilaterally in a body that takes decision through consensus. What we are not going to do, which is not going to be helpful, we're not going to ask countries to boycott G20 meetings and G20 processes. We were against the US boycott. We will not promote any form of boycott. However, we will continue to advocate for the ongoing championing of the issues that were strongly surfaced during the Johannesburg summit, so that those issues remain firmly on the G20 agenda, whether the US approves of those issues or not. Those are issues that are important not only to us as a country and as a continent, but to the rest of the world. Issues of inequality, issues of how we deal with poverty, climate change, how to ensure climate justice, and so on. Those are issues that cannot be confined to just a single year presidency. Those are issues that need to be taken forward and engaged upon on an ongoing basis. We are also in close discussion with G7 members to ensure that there is a bridge, a continuity bridge substantively of the issues that were surfaced and dealt with at the Johannesburg summit into the G7 agenda as well. And some of those G7 member countries are also G20 member countries. And so that's what we are doing. And while we on, Bule, if I may use your question time, while we're on the G20, it will be important just to alert colleagues that we have released what we call G20 at 20 review. It's the final report. And essentially what this is, it's the report that has been published under the responsibility of the South African 2025 G20 presidency as the outcome of the G20 at 20 review, which was undertaken in response to G20 leaders' agreement in their 2024 Rio de Janeiro declaration to assess the first full cycle of G20 presidencies since 2008 and to provide recommendations for its second cycle. As you know, South Africa was the last member to host the G20, which marked 20 years of the G20, hence the label G20 at 20 review, to look at the work of the G20 and the impact of the G20. So please do visit our online channels and download the report. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, it has already been issued to all the media groups. If not, we will. Oh yeah, it has been issued. RT has circulated it in all the media groups. So we'll encourage colleagues to download the report and just go through it and familiarize themselves with the various issues contained in the report. Pule, second bite at the cherry.
Mr. Vincent, is the presidency open to a discussion around the extension of the timeline of the Madlanga Commission? Looking how we've been proceeding, phase 2 has just kick-started, but you still need phase 3 of the commission to start. And we see that there is still a number of witnesses that still need to come through and testify. And usually, testimonies take just about 2 to 3 days, which is quite a lengthy process. But is the presidency open to that discussion to say that the commission's proceedings should be extended, given the number of witnesses that still need to come through? Thank you.
So, Pule, the process there is that Justice Madlanga will be the one to approach the president with that proposal for the president's consideration. And Justice Madlanga will table before the president the various issues that will have informed that request. And without speculating, I will safely say that's something the president will be open to discussing and considering. There was a lot of sensitivity when the president set up the commission around the cost of commissions in general. And government and the Minister of Justice and Constitutional Development has been paying particular attention on the cost aspects of this exercise. So the president will then have to be advised on both the merits for an extension as well as what will be the cost implications. What is important, though, that I must emphasize is that the president does expect that the commission will also exercise, call it its right or responsibility in terms of referring matters that are deemed to be of criminal nature for criminal prosecution. And that doesn't have to wait, by the way, for the interim report or the final report. The commission can and does have the provision to exercise that mechanism in terms of the terms of reference. And so the president is quite keen to see the commission exercising that right or that responsibility as provided for in the terms of reference. Kenny has another question.
Thank you. Just to clarify on the interim report that you're expecting by Wednesday, I'm assuming you haven't received that interim report yet.
Not yet.
And then the other question is, because that decision can also be subjected to judicial review, are you expecting any legal backlash to that decision to not release the interim report? And if that is the case, how will the presidency respond to such an action if it does arise as a result of that decision?
Well, I think it was you, Kenny, in the preface to your question, that there's no legal obligation on the side of the president to release the interim report. And so any form of litigation in that regard will be frivolous and unfortunate. The president has undertaken that the final report will be made public. It's the final report that will by far be the most consequential, if you like. And so to litigate over an interim report while the entire exercise is still underway will really be frivolous and time wasting, to be honest. And so we will urge those parties to be patient. The hearings are open to the public. You guys are able to follow the hearings. There is a great deal of transparency that has been ensured around this process. And so for anybody to claim an absence of transparency just because the interim report has not been made public will be wrong in their perspective. Oh, Patience, do we have questions on WhatsApp?
Yes, we do. We've got quite a few. The first one is from TEZ News Agency, Vitali. His question is around the situation in the DRC. So he's asking, has South Africa, specifically President, been monitoring the developments in the DRC? And is the president in contact with President of the Republic of, is President in contact with President Tshisekedi regarding the developments in the DRC? And also, is there need or any interest in South Africa to have some kind of input to stabilize the situation in the DRC? That's the first one.
Let me deal with that one, yeah. Look, South Africa, through SADC, as well as the AU, and in support of the United Nations efforts in bringing about peace in the DRC, has been seized with efforts to bring about a peaceful solution to the challenges facing the DRC for close to 30 years. And that is a commitment that remains, firmly so. There is ongoing engagements at various levels, diplomatic levels between ourselves as well as the Democratic Republic of Congo. And so those engagements remain ongoing. Yes, indeed. We are monitoring the situation and we are engaged, as I said, not only just as South Africa, but in support of multilateral efforts in finding a peaceful solution to the DRC.
The second one is from Zolega Kotasha from Newsroom Africa. So she wants to know, is there an update on the South Africans that are trapped in the Ukraine? Previously, South Africa issued a statement saying there will be an investigation into the incident. What is the latest on that issue? And then the second question is regarding the advisory panel that conducted interviews for the next National Director of Public Prosecutions, which handed over a report to President Ramaphosa on Friday. She says, however, this happened amid threats of legal action. And then the question is, are there any concerns that the president, that the president's consideration of the report could trigger court action or any further delays to the appointment of the NDPP?
Okay, let me start with the last one. The first one is on the South African man stuck or trapped in the Ukraine. The institution of the panel to consider candidates for the role of the National Director of Public Prosecutions is not a process that is statutory. It's not a legal process as such. However, it was the President's own volition to bring in an element of transparency into the process that selects the NDPP, recognizing the importance of the role as well as the central importance of the institution itself in our broader criming effort, as well as, in our broader crime fighting effort, as well as in our arsenal to deal with various crimes that afflict the country. And so any threat of legal action in this regard is quite misplaced. And I'm not sure what will it be based on. So let's get that out of the way. Yes, indeed, the report, the President is in possession of the report from the panel. Now that report is being processed, so the President will take the amount of time that he needs to go through that report and even go as far as interacting with various members of the panel should he require any form of clarification. So we just have to be patient and give the President the time he requires to go through that report. And at an appropriate time, the President will then make an announcement with respect to his decision coming out of that report.
Ukraine.
Then the update, yes. So there's no update yet. It's the process to retrieve those young men remains a very sensitive process. They are in a dangerous environment. They are facing grave danger to their lives. And we are still in discussions with various authorities, both in Russia as well as in Ukraine, to see how we can free them from the situation they're in. In fact, the emphasis is more with the authorities in Russia and less so with the authorities in the Ukraine, because the information that we have is that they were bungled into the Russian military forces. And so those engagements are still ongoing to bring them back. It remains an issue of priority for the government as well as the president, and it's an issue that is receiving the highest possible attention in our government. Let's do the WhatsApp.
There's more WhatsApp questions. So this is a question from Emmy from Tech Central. Initially, her question was regarding the fallout between the minister and the deputy minister of communications, but you've touched on it earlier when you answered Pule. So she's now sent a second question to ask, what happens now regarding the BEE and regulatory alignment in the ICT sector, and what ICASA can do within the law? Political parties believe that the minister is overstepping. Will this now go to Parliament?
ICASA is an independent regulator. It's guided by the law. And so whatever the ICASA does in this regard will be informed by the prescripts of the law. What the minister is doing is to look at how do we accelerate the licensing process of various role players that are seeking to participate in our telecoms and ICT industry in this regard. And so it's still early days for anybody to speculate what the ICASA's decision is going to be. I know that the minister has issued a directive. Notwithstanding that directive, the regulator, in this case being the ICASA, will have to exercise its judgment independently and do so in accordance with the law.
Okay, Peter Fabricius had a question on G20, which you've answered regarding the current Sherpa meeting in Washington, if South Africa is lobbying for other members to, regarding the exclusion of South Africa. Also now, okay, you've also answered this on the Ukraine, so I'm fine on WhatsApp.
Okay. Everyone happy? Kenny is smiling, in a rush to go and do December things. Everybody else looks like... Am I going to watch Bafana Bafana? No, the opening game is in Mexico. Yeah. Yes. As they proceed to the US, I'd love to. And if they reach the final, I may very well be there with the president. So, you know, sorry? No, we won't be invited. We won't need an invite. We'll just go there. We won't need an invite to watch Bafana Bafana. We'll just rock up and make sure that we have visas so that we don't get kicked out at the airport. You know, football fans are football fans, so we'll be there as football fans in large numbers alongside other football fans. So if you're hosting the World Cup, you just have to live with the fact that football fans are going to arrive, whether you like them or not. You know, it's part of hosting the World Cup. Otherwise, give it back to us. We can host it. We've got the stadiums. We've got the stadiums. We have the infrastructure. So we'll gladly take it if you decide to change your mind, because there's a set of fans that you don't like. I'm joking. Don't quote me on this. It's not an official position. Okay, we're done, colleagues. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful Christmas. Oh, yes, Pule? On what? Madlanga. In isiZulu.
isiZulu, yes.
Okay. Umbiko we-commission ka-Judge Madlanga lo ozokwethula kumongameli ngolesithathu akuwona umbiko ophelele futhi wokugcina. Ilo esingathi umbiko wesikhashana, preliminary report, umbiko ophelele uzokwethulwa kumongameli nasemphakathini wonke waseNingizimu Afrika ekugcineni komsebenzi wekhomishani kaJudge Madlanga. Ngakho ke kubalekile ukuthi kube nokubekezela ngoba abanye bofakazi abathule ubufakazi basazobizwa babuyele kwikhomishani beyothula ubufakazi obuphelele. Ngakho ke ngeke kulunge ukuthi sikhiphe lo mbiko ubufakazi bonke bungakaqoqwa bungakacutshungulwa ngendlela efanele. Kothi ke mase kuphela umsebenzi wonke ubufakazi bonke sebuqoqiwe bacutshungulwa ikhomishani yabhala umqingo wombiko wokugcina bawuthula kumongameli bese ke kube wona ke mbiko loyo ke esobe sesiukhulula ukuthi nomphakathi wonkana waseNingizimu Afrika ucubungule ngendlela yawo. Siyabonga. Sinifisela ukhisimuso omuhle nonke. Niphephe emgaqweni, niphathe kahle. Size sibonane ngonyaka ozayo. Siyabonga.